So I'm not quite ready to start assembling the engine for my 1951 Ford because I'm tying up a few loose ends, including the intake manifold and the block. And what I'm doing today is called port matching, where you ensure that the runners in the intake manifold match up with the corresponding ones in the block, so there are no casting defects or nasty offsets that might impede the airflow into the engine. What I've got right now is some layout dye on the backside of the intake manifold. It's that blue stuff, which might actually be a little bit hard to see on camera, but it's there, trust me. And then you take the intake manifold gasket itself and you slap that down. But when this is all aligned correctly, you can scribe around each port with, a pick or something sharp. And then that line will correspond when you do the same thing down here on the block itself. And if you grind the ports to match the gasket, you know that there shouldn't really be any flow impediments in the intake tract of the engine to help this thing breathe just a little bit better. Now, what I am not doing, however, is any serious work to the intake ports themselves. Sure, some guys will hog out a whole bunch of material here to try and get as much airflow into the engine as possible, but I'm building a fairly mild street engine. I want a lot of torque, I want reliability, I want drivability, so I'm not pushing this thing to the absolute ragged edge. And porting these old Flathead V8 engines can be a little bit risky, especially if you don't know what you're doing, because there is coolant that runs through on either side of these intake ports, and if you go too deep, you're going to hit water, and you're going to ruin your block. That's going to be almost impossible to repair. So for mild street use, I'm pretty much going to leave this just as it is. And here is the finished product on the block. As you can see, I just tidied things up a little bit and, of course, made sure that the inlet ports match the gasket, which, line it up somewhat close, you can see that should be a pretty good match. And here is the intake manifold, same exact idea. Also, I tried not to go crazy polishing everything super smooth. From what I understand, you kind of want a rough, pebbly surface in your intake manifold and cylinder head ports to prevent fuel from sort of sticking to the walls and pooling there where it can cause drivability issues. So I left some of the sections deeper down rough as cast iron. But the big question is this going to add any power? Is this going to improve the engine's performance? And probably not. These Flathead V8s make so little horsepower to begin with. I can't imagine this will make that much of a difference, but I'll tell you, I will sleep better knowing that I at least tried.